Me and welcoming Ms. Tina Meier.
Hello, good evening. I am grateful to be here. It's been an amazing day so far. I went on a tour and tonight is going to be wonderful. Again, my name is Tina Meier, and I will tell you, I was not trained to be a public speaker. This was not my lifelong profession that I had known about. I was sitting back and I was reading this magazine, which I found out, or actually found out it's not even publicated anymore, but I loved it. I was reading it and it was talking about public service. Is it worth it? And knowing that this is a school, the Clinton School of Public Service, it was making me really sit back and think about it. I, many years ago, was a mom who raised 2 girls. And I remember I would sit there and we made a good living. I was a real estate agent and things were going well in my life. But I would sit there at nighttime sometimes and think, is this it? Is this what it's made? Isn't there something more I can do? Isn't there something else? Can I go to the hospital and help children? Can I do this? Can I do that? And then, you know, the day would go on and it would be a couple weeks later and I would sit there and question again, is this all there is? Is this what I was meant to do? And I got my answer, not in the way I wanted to, but I did get my answer finally. And I will tell you, as far as public service, if anything that you do in this world is from your heart and with the compassion, and you go out there and you make a change one by one by one, then anything that you do that creates change is a positive thing. And so I think it's amazing that you're here, that you are getting your degree in public service, because we need 100 more schools like this and thousands more people who are willing to be able to give themselves, because it's not the high-paying jobs, it is the things that we do that are from the heart that make the difference. I started this foundation because of my daughter, Megan. Again, I was a real estate agent, had no clue about public speaking. I was the one who always sunk down in the seats. When anybody in high school would say, okay, Tina, it's time for you to read from the report, I was like, no way, not me, because if I misspell a word or trip over my words, I'm going to be so embarrassed. But my daughter, Megan, was born on November 6th of 1992. Megan was an everyday normal kid. We live in St. Louis, Missouri. Megan was the type of child, though, from a very early age that worried about herself, self-esteem issues. We talk about, well, that's something that we can help our children with. Megan, from kindergarten, would come home from school and say, Mom, my legs are different than the other girls' legs. Mom, I'm taller than the other girls. Mom, the girls are prettier than me. At this age, I would tell her she was beautiful. You're beautiful from the inside and out, Meg. We're all built differently. It's okay. We all have differences. And I could give her a hug and she would go outside and play and things would move on. Through the years, Megan was in 3rd grade. She was struggling at night, crying quite a bit. She was having problems with friendships. And, you know, we always hear when children have self-esteem issues, get them involved, get them connected. Well, I tried everything known to man, from horseback riding to piano to cooking to basketball to volleyball, you name it. If I thought she would be interested in it, we were going to do it. But Megan would start something, you know, we'd pay the $200 for all the equipment and everything that you would need, and about 3 weeks in, she was done. She wasn't going back. Megan wanted something new to kind of move on. So in 3rd grade, when I sat on her bed and she was crying at night, I said, Meg, talk to me, what's going on? And this 3rd grader looked at me and said she wanted to kill herself. For a 3rd grade child saying that, I wasn't prepared. I had no clue what I'm supposed to even say to her. I was petrified. I mean, I literally took off running to my bathroom and cried for 10 minutes. I didn't know how to respond to her. I gathered myself together and I went back in and sat in her bed, and I wanted to know, did Megan know what this really meant, or maybe Megan overheard it? I was praying she overheard it. I said, Meg, why would you feel this way? And she said, Mom, everybody hates me. I hate myself. I said, Megan, do you know what you would do? And she told me exactly what she would do. She would go downstairs and get a knife. I was petrified. I slept with her that night. The next morning, I didn't wait for an appointment. I ran straight into the pediatrician's office, and it was almost like this throw her at him, like, fix her, do something. I don't know what to do. He said, listen, Tina, this is over my head. She needs to go to a child psychologist, psychologist or psychiatry. I said, well, how do I do that? What do I do? It's a long process, but Megan finally was referred. After a period of time, a lot of paperwork, because there's not an exact blood test that you can take, Megan was diagnosed with depression and attention deficit disorder. I will tell you, children in our school systems today, years and years ago, it was learning disabilities. They were put in a different classroom, they just didn't learn as well. Now we know the diagnosis. We know it's ADD or ADHD, Asperger's or autism. If children have depression or bipolar, mood disorders, we understand those. But the problem is that our children that do have them or we have them, we're not socially the same as other children. And so what happens is they go into a school setting and all of a sudden they react differently. They're kind of that bull in the china shop. They do different things. They burst out. They jump in the wrong places that they're not supposed to. And what tends to happen is they get issues with friendships, and then they also have imbalances with teachers and with the staff. And so these children ride a roller coaster. They can sometimes, many times, be the victims, but they also can in turn be the bullies themselves because they get tired, they lash out, and so they'll lash out at somebody else. Megan struggled through all of this and counseling and constant contact with the schools. But Megan entered middle school, which was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 6th grade wasn't quite so bad for Megan, but 7th grade, her picture in the middle, was pretty horrible from day one. Megan was the girl who went to lunch, and the lunch line had boys who started stomping behind her, calling her a fat cow and an elephant. Megan didn't come home and tell me about this because it's embarrassing. Kids don't run home and tell moms and dads about the names kids are calling them. Usually they try to deal with it on their own or just tell friends. I found out because her lunch account wasn't coming down, so I went to school one day and I peeked in. I saw her sitting there at a table with a water bottle and a napkin. All of her other friends were eating, but Megan wasn't. So I waited. I didn't talk to her that day at school. I waited till she came home. After school, I said, Meg, talk to me. What's going on? You're not eating. She tried denying it at first, and then I said, Meg, I did see you. I said, what is going on? She finally told me what the boys were saying. I, as a parent, said, well, honey, don't worry about them. Ignore them. Turn the other cheek, Meg, you're better than that. Listen, if you ignore them, Meg, they're gonna get bored, they're gonna move on, they're not gonna pay attention to you anymore about that. Megan looked at me like I was crazy. And she said, Mom, could you do it if it was you? And she was right. Our kids, sometimes they say things. They're bouncing from thing to thing, and it's so easy for us because we're worried about so many other things. It's easy for us to say, don't worry about it. It's fine. You're going to be okay tomorrow. You'll have a boyfriend in a few years. You got the whole entire world ahead of you. Don't worry about that. In their world, though, if we stopped and thought about how we feel and what we go through, we would realize that saying that doesn't work. I then said, when she told me that, I said, well, okay, Meg, then I'm going to the school because that's what we do as adults. Either we say, don't worry about it, ignore it, or we're going to fix it. Those two things. And Megan grabbed me by the arm and begged me, Mom, please do not go to the school. You don't understand it. You're going to make it 10 times worse. You don't get what they're going to do to me when they find out. And this is something that is consistent throughout the country, no matter where I go to speak to students. They state that we as adults, parents, tell them, ignore it, don't worry about it. If it's not your business, if it's not happening to you, you stay out of it, or I'm going to handle it. And kids don't want either. At this point, Megan's like, Mom, I can handle this. I can do it. You're at a hard place because you want your child to grow. You realize they have to make mistakes and they have to learn from it. And so I wanted to let her try to work through it. So Megan, what I had seen over the next several months, Megan started buying her friends candy bars and decorating their lockers and inviting them places and you name it, anything Megan could do. I started asking her one day, Meg, who are you giving this stuff to? And she told me the names of the kids. These were the names of the kids, the popular girls and the boys who hung out with the popular girls that were making fun of her. I said, Megan, honey, you can't buy friendship. A friend is there through good and through bad, not just for what you're going to give them. Really, if they're your friend, then they're going to be friends with you no matter what. Megan gave me the typical teen hand of like, Mom, seriously, you don't get it. They are my friends. Megan also begged to get out of gym. I thought 7th grade girls, you know what, they didn't like to sweat and be gross and their makeup gross. That's why I thought she didn't want to dress out. I found out later, Megan never told me, probably because of the way I reacted the first time, which was, Meg, just ignore it or I'm going to handle it, was girls found her in the gym locker room crying because kids would laugh at her, calling her thunder thighs among numerous other names. That's why she didn't want to go to gym. Bottom line is, no matter what we did, It didn't matter the style of clothes. It didn't matter what I tried getting her involved in. It didn't matter my communication with the schools. This child was miserable going to school and coming home from school, and I couldn't take it anymore. We researched different schools and finally switched her to an 8th grade school, or a private school for her 8th grade year. Not because we thought that private school was going to be perfect and everybody was going to love butterflies and everybody was happy every day. It was because it went from a really large school to a much smaller school. It was uniforms, no makeup, no fingernail polish, no jewelry. Now, Megan was not thrilled because she loved lip gloss and 4 inches of, the black eyeliner. She loved all that stuff. But it was a change. In between that summer of 7th and 8th grade, now I've battled with weight my entire life since my first diet in 7th grade. I was on a baby food diet. So I've always battled weight. So it was always when, she was growing up, it was never let's watch our weight. It was healthy lifestyle and let's eat something healthier. And so I had always tried doing that. And it was always kind of like, yeah, whatever, Mom, I don't want to walk. I don't want to do that. Well, Megan started working out. And she started doing it on her own, and she lost like 25 pounds. She started the volleyball team at the new school. She started making new friends. And going into this 8th grade year, this child who struggled for so long was finally happy and bubbly and funny. And it was amazing as a parent to finally see her looking forward to things instead of her being so distraught. That 8th grade year started, and Megan had big plans. Megan wanted to have this huge 14th birthday. She was one of the older kids. And going into that 8th grade year, about 3 weeks in, Megan came home to me one day and said, Mom, I'm going to be 14, And I'm like, well, I do kind of remember I had you. Yeah, I know you're going to be 14. She's like, Mom, I've got this great idea. I want a MySpace. And I'm like, MySpace? Megan, are you serious? I was the mom who watched 2020 and How to Catch a Predator. I watched all of those shows. So sexual predators I was petrified of. I was the mom who would take her in the stores when they had the milk cartons and they had the names on the wall. I'd be like, Megan, you stay by me in the store, you hold my hand, you do not leave, because see? So I was always one of those petrified moms. She's like, Mom, come on, what's the big deal? Everybody has it. So for 2 days solid, she begged me, and I finally came up with some rules. The first rule was I told Megan, you don't have the password to your account. I have the password. Your profile is kept private. I have to approve anything that goes on your page. That means pictures and layouts and music. The computers were always in open spaces, never allowed in a private space or a bedroom. And because of watching those shows, I downloaded a program that monitored every instant message and every web page Megan was on. Now, when I travel and I tell middle school and high school students this, literally their faces drop. They're like, are you serious, lady? You are nuts. I asked them how many of them are thrilled I'm not your mom, and the majority of them raised their hands. They're thrilled because they think I am out of my mind. I explained to them the reason I did all of those, the reason that I sat there and thought about what I could do to protect her was because Megan was the type of kid who was impulsive. Megan was not a stupid kid by any stretch of the imagination, but Megan was the type of kid who believed the good in everybody. She believed if somebody was being nice that they had that true intention. She didn't have that ability to stop and think, well, maybe this might not be good. Megan always went right straight for it. If I would say, Megan, don't go to the left 50 feet because there's going to be a drop-off, literally I would turn my back and Megan would be at 49.5 feet just peeking over to look. That's who she was. So I was always trying to be there to protect her. Now I have a daughter who's 16 years old now. She does not have the same restrictions as Megan did, but she doesn't have the ADD and the depression and those things. Allison, I do have her password to her accounts, and I usually tell kids this and they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. There's no way my parents are going to have it. I said, well, I pay the bills and she lives with me, so it's kind of like the rule. It's, too bad, so sad thing. But bottom line at this point, Megan did not like the rules and said, fine, Mom, whatever, gave me the typical hand of like, you're crazy anyways. So Megan started the MySpace, started adding friends from her old school, friends from her new school, and things were going really well. About 3 weeks in, she got a friend request from a boy by the name of Josh Evans, and she was so excited. She's like, Mom, come look at this. He is so hot. And Megan used that word since kindergarten that she thought boys were hot. So this was nothing new. I'm like, Megan, do you know him? Is he a friend of a friend or somehow? And she's like, Mom, I have no clue. He's just hot, so please. I'm like, okay, Meg, here's the deal. I will let you add him, but anything negative, anything sexual, he's deleted immediately. She said, okay, I promise. Now, most of the time I have students who I know are looking at me, but especially adults who look at me and say, lady, you're contradicting yourself. Why in the world would you do that? You have all of these rules in place, and then now you let her add somebody that she doesn't know. Why would you do that? because I had, during those 2 days, I had researched and looked a lot into all of this. I had seen kids who were making up fake accounts. Parents had no clue. They could make up at that time with MySpace. They made up all kinds of different names. I knew that if Megan really wanted to know about it, Megan was going to figure out a way. Megan would go down the street to a friend's house and make up an account, and then I'd have no clue. At least this way, I could monitor it. So Megan added him. Josh thought Megan was beautiful. Megan thought he was cute. She liked him. He liked her. They were in this, within a week, this so-called relationship. I'm like, what? What in the world are you talking about? I'm like, Megan, you know, I did not let her put her phone number on there. She couldn't put what school she went to. You can't put what mall you went to. All of these things. I'm like, Meg, how can you have a relationship with this boy? You don't even know him. I said, Meg, this could be a 10-year-old kid. This could be an 80-year-old grandma. Come on. Megan gave me the hand again, like, seriously, Mom, you are so crazy. At that time, when I looked at all of these and looked at the pictures, I even did the thing. I even called the police department. Can you find out if an account is real or not? Is there any possible way? They put me through to the Cyber Crimes Division. Cyber Crimes Division said, listen, lady, at that time there's more MySpace accounts than people alive on Earth. Unless we know it is an adult who is preying on a child, we can't do anything about it. There's no possible way. So Megan was getting ready for this 14th birthday. Megan loved black and white polka dots. It's a theme for our foundation. And we found this really cute dress because she was having this amazing party she wanted. It was about 5 weeks later. Now, her and Josh really are more friends now. And Megan liked 10 other boys by this time. So it was a Sunday, October 15th, 2006, just over 6 years ago. She had 2 volleyball games that morning. That evening, came home and filling out her birthday invitations and asked to sign onto MySpace. So I signed her on, and she got this message from Josh that said, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. You're not a nice person. Megan was like, where'd this come from, Mom? I said, honey, just respond. Maybe he's having a bad day. Just ask him. So she responded, but there was no response back from him, and I said, it's late. You've got to sign off. The next morning, Megan gets up for school. She's in this great mood. All of her birthday invitations are together. Now, I will tell you, Megan was not perfect. Megan made mistakes, said things, did things she shouldn't have done every day like we all have done. But Megan had a huge heart to help other people. And Megan wanted, anytime one of her friends were sad or upset or having a bad day, she'd have me stop at the gas station on the way to school. She would run in and pick up 2 Hershey candy bars. She would keep one for herself. She'd give one to one of her friends, and we did that morning. I dropped her off at school. I picked her up in the afternoon. She was in this great mood, running out. Mom, everything's great. We're going to have this great party. Everybody can come. We get home. The minute we walk through the door, instantly, Mom, can I sign on to MySpace? She wanted to see what Josh had to say. And we talk about kids being connected in this world, and as adults, it's very easy for us to say, why are they always so connected? Why can't they just turn it off? But if you look around, we as adults in this world are just as connected as they are. If I would have told you before you can walk in and sit down, I want every single one of your cell phones, iPads, iTouches, anything that has an on and off button, we're turning it off and we're going to keep that in a box. How many of you think that you'd probably be shaking within about 20 minutes? Because how are your kids doing? Is your spouse at home? We want to know. We want to be connected. Even if we can't talk to them, we still look at the screen. So for her, I signed her on. I said, Meg, you've got a few minutes, though. I've got to take your sister to the orthodontist. So she signed on, and the message from Josh was, you heard me. No one likes you. No one wants to be friends with you. And she responded back of, why are you saying this? Where is this coming from? And they started going back and forth, not a major breakdown. It was just more of why and where's this coming from. I yelled in and said, your sister's just off the bus. You need to sign off now. Megan said, Mom, please let me finish this last message, and I will. Typically, I never did that, but I was in a rush this day, and I left. Her dad was upstairs sleeping. I called her 2 different times from the orthodontist office. Both times she was sobbing and crying and saying they're being horrible and mean. And I kept saying, Megan, get off the MySpace. I got home. I was frustrated as a parent. I knew she was distraught. There was homework. There was dinner. I had been running all day long. I walk into the living room, and she is still crying at the computer, and I told her to get up. I started looking at these messages. These messages went from Josh to Megan, Megan to Josh, and now Josh got 2 other girls involved. It's easy enough to get other people involved face to face, but when you do anything through technology, you can get mass numbers of people. These messages that went back and forth were humiliating, they were mean, they were cruel. They were not just, Megan, we don't like you anymore and you're not a nice person. They went from that to the nicest messages, said Megan Meier used her full name, is a fat ass, Megan Meier is a whore, and those were the nicest words that went out about her. I started looking at all of this stuff, and now I seen her lashing back at them. And I was like, Megan, come on, I talked to you about this. You can't go, if you go back and forth, it's turned into this huge war. If you would have listened to me, if you would have signed off when I told you to, we could have dealt with this. I said, Meg, you're not any of these things that they're calling you. And she looked at me and she said, Mom, who's gonna believe me? They're gonna believe them. It's going to everybody at my old school, everybody at my new school, no one's gonna believe me. She said, you're supposed to be my mom, you're supposed to be on my side. And she took off running upstairs to her room. I heard her dad stop her for a few minutes, and then he came into the kitchen and we started talking. He was one of those dads, he didn't get it. He didn't think she needed a MySpace, didn't need a camera, didn't need a cell phone. She just needed to go outside and play is what he thought. So trying to explain to him what she was going through, it was all foreign to him. Probably 20 minutes went by and I just had this horrible feeling. I stopped in mid-sentence and took off running upstairs to Megan's room. I opened the door and I found Megan hanging in her closet. We called 911. Megan's 10-and-a-half-year-old sister unfortunately ran home in the midst of all of this. Megan was transported to Children's Hospital in St. Louis in a coma, but 24 hours later, on October 17th of 2006, Megan passed away. Megan was weeks from being 14 years old. Today, she would actually have turned 20 on November the 6th. I will tell you, there is nothing in this world that can prepare you for the loss of your child. I lost my dad when I was 15 to brain cancer. I lost my only sibling, my brother, just 3 years ago, coming up tomorrow, from a heart attack going in after back surgery. And then I lost my daughter. And I will tell you, there is absolutely no words to truly describe the loss or the pain. And we left that hospital that night trying to figure out why, where, how did this happen? I mean, we were there 20 minutes. We were all at the house. How did this happen? And her dad went back to the house to see, was there a note? Was there something? And there was no note, but he saw the last 2 messages on the MySpace account came on instant messaging. And they were from Josh Evans to Megan that said, the world would be a better place without you and have a blank rest of your life. Those are the last 2 messages that Megan had seen that I did not see the night before. Because of time restraints, I'm going to play a Dr. Phil video that will fill in the rest of the story, and then I'll be able to talk to you more after that.
Okay, we've all heard the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, what if hurtful words were posted on the internet for the entire world to see and never erased? It's being called e-vengeance, bullycide, or cyberbullying, and it is on the rise and out of control.
In the old days, bullies attacked on the playground. Now they attack online.
Cyberbullying is a growing menace, which schools have trouble controlling.
On this message board, kids write about who they hate or who they think is pregnant or has an STD.
John Halligan believes depression from cyberbullying contributed to his son's suicide at age 13.
17% of girls said they had bullied someone online.
She was basically calling everyone whores and sluts and hoes. I had like 300 emails saying that I was a whore and everything.
Cyberspace is the new venue for the schoolyard bully.
Well, it's a story that's made national headlines. 13-year-old Megan Meier committed suicide after being bullied online by who she thought was a teenage boy. But little did her parents know at the time that the bullying actually involved their adult neighbor who lived just 4 doors down. And the whole thing, the whole person she was talking to on the website was a hoax. It was a made-up person. Take a look.
On October 16th of 2006, my daughter Megan hanged herself in her bedroom. Megan was 13 years old. Megan had a MySpace account, and she had become friends with a boy named Josh Evans and corresponded for roughly 4 to 6 weeks.
Megan received a message from Josh Evans stating that he did not want to be friends with Megan any longer, that he heard she was not a very nice person. Megan was absolutely getting bombarded with these insults. and she said, "Mom, you know, they're just being mean to me online." I was aggravated, so I had my voice raised with her. "You knew better than to stay in the MySpace. You knew the rules." She was really upset, and I said, "Megan, I am really disappointed with you." And she said, "You're supposed to be my mom. You're supposed to be on my side." And she took off running upstairs. And those are the last words that she said to me.
Tina came into the kitchen, and we were talking about basically why was Megan on the computer.
Then all of a sudden, my heart just dropped. I just had this horrible feeling. I turned around and took off up the stairs.
I heard this god-awful scream. I ran upstairs into Megan's room, and she was hanging in her closet. I grabbed Megan in one arm, and she had a belt around her neck, and it was really tight, and I couldn't get it off. So I grabbed Megan and picked her up with one arm, and I grabbed the whole closet organizer with the other arm and ripped it all out of the wall to get her down. Tina called 911.
Okay, what's going on there? My daughter just hung herself.
Tina and I rode along in the ambulance with her, and we got to Children's Hospital, and they put her in the ICU. October 17th, on Tuesday, she finally passed. They took all the cords and IVs and everything off her. We just laid in the bed and held her.
It's just the most horrible feeling that I've ever felt in my entire life.
About 6 weeks later, we received a phone call from a neighbor down the street.
She told us that she had information that the neighbor, Lori Drew, was responsible for creating this fake MySpace account. Megan had known her daughter since the 4th grade. They'd spend the night at each other's house. Lori Drew and her daughter, they created this MySpace account as a joke. They wanted to find out what Megan was saying about their daughter. Lori Drew confessed in the police report that that's why she created this Josh Evans account.
I do blame Lori Drew for what happened to Megan, without a doubt.
We were connected with the FBI, and through the investigation, we found out later in the spring of 2007 that there just was not a law that they could fit it into.
The Drew family totally played us like fools.
It is cyberbullying to the 10th degree. And the fight to me now is to fight for justice, for the laws to change. This is not just things that you see on TV. Megan was a real person, a real girl with real dreams. I show this video because I think many times in the world that we live in, even our children, the world they live in, we hear about so many tragedies every single day, whether it is natural disasters, murders, diseases. We hear about it when we turn the TV on, the radio, on the internet. We hear about this. And so sometimes it becomes very easy to be able to push ourselves away from that. You know, when you hear it in the morning, sometimes we turn it off and say, okay, that's too much. I can't start my day off like that, or I've heard enough tragedy. And for our kids that grow up in this world, it's just something that happens. It's not kind of a big deal unless it happens to them. And I show the video because Megan was just like every kid. Megan was in a house where we loved her. It wasn't one of those things that you hear these bad stories that happen and it happens 1 in a million. The reason that I travel, the reason that I go to speak about these issues is not because it's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy the part of being able to spread the message and get the message out there on a bigger scale. The whole purpose, and a lot of times when I go into places, it's everybody's up and everybody's talking and the mood's great, and then all of a sudden I walk in and it's like, boom, you know? And so I understand that these are tough topics to talk about and they're not easy, and it makes us, you know, scared, especially if we have children in the school or we have kids that we teach. It is a scary topic to talk about, but I will tell you, the more that we have dialogue, the more that we talk about this issue, the better off we are, and we're going to be able to help lives. And that's what our ultimate goal is if I knew when this happened, there was no grand plan for this foundation to start. It was just survival. And then it was, Tina, my aunt, continued to keep pushing me, saying, listen, you need to go out, you need to go tell Megan's story. Maybe one more TV show that you do, maybe one more interview that you do, maybe one more newspaper article, maybe one more kid will listen. And, you know, she kind of kept shoving me in front to keep doing this. And then it was, just do one school presentation. Come on, Tina, you can do this. You'll help those kids. And from that point on, this foundation grew into a place today where it is amazing. I pushed it back many, many times because I was always one of those people that didn't like grandstanding from people of, I've done this and I've done that and I've saved this many lives. I don't like that. I was always one of those that said, you know, listen, I'm glad I brought the message. I'm hoping I helped. And today I can look back 6 years later, even though the foundation's been around for just now almost 5, I can stand back and look and say, I know we have helped save lives. The stories that we receive just from students hearing about the story, just from students. A high school girl came up to me 2 weeks ago and stood in front of me crying and trembling saying, I need you to know that your story, Megan, saved my life. And I was like, how? What happened? She was in, middle school and her 8th grade year, and she was going through horrible, horrible times. And she was researching about suicide. And she came across Megan's story. And she started watching videos and started watching the YouTube videos of me talking or her dad talking and all of the things that we did. And she said, I sat there and looked at your face and realized I couldn't do that to my parents. And she said, I went and talked to them and I got help and I'm here where I'm at today. And so for me, it's those little things, each one, because I can't put a value on a child's life. I know what I would do to get Megan's life back. And to put a value on one life, to me, truly means everything. And that's why we continue to do what we do. And I think that's why you're here for public service, because you're doing it to try to help others. And that's my hope, that today is an inspiration that one person can be the change. One person can make the change for another person. Whether you change the entire world or community, or you change one person at a time, it will have a ripple effect. And that ripple effect, you may never know where it ends or it goes to, but you have created that change, and that's my hope. Quickly, I know we're going to do questions and answers, but talking about cyberbullying specifically, when we talk about children and empathy, the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research analyzed 72 studies on empathy of nearly 14,000 college students from 1979 to 2009. Their reports show that college students are about 40% less empathetic than they were 2 to 3 decades ago. When you take that and you take everything that our children have at their hands 24 hours a day, it does not become a big deal, and so that empathy continues to drop. They don't have to see face-to-face consequences. They don't have to see what our reactions are. You send it, you do it, and how many of us would rather send an email to a coworker about something that's disturbing or bothering us versus having to say it to them face-to-face? It's much easier to do it because we don't have to worry about if they're going to get mad or sad or say something. We send it and then we deal with it later. And so honestly, with what our kids are going through, we have to start working on rebuilding empathy within them. Cyberbullying, I will tell you, many students, especially kids, are sick and tired of hearing the word about bullying and cyberbullying. They think it's overrated. Everybody talks about it. Come on, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal unless you've been affected by it. And we do overuse the word bullying because anytime somebody says something mean or negative or sends a message or doesn't like something, we assume that somebody's bullying us. And I always try to state, if somebody says something mean or rude, it's just mean or rude. It still hurts us, it still bothers us, it's not okay, but it does not constitute that they are bullying us. Bullying, cyberbullying, is repeated in nature. It is something that continues. And so what's happening is we're saying everything is bullying, and now what it's doing is clouding up the actions that are really happening with bullying and cyberbullying. To talk about what is the difference between bullying and cyberbullying in today's world, there is a huge difference. Children, even 5 to 6 years ago, were able to, they didn't have the cell phones that are the smartphones that have every single thing at their hands. They had to sometimes come home and use the computer to find out about things. Their cell phones worked, but there wasn't texting. Our children today, if they have a smartphone or their friends have a smartphone, they keep that with them 24 hours a day. Most of us have children that have the cell phones, and most of them sleep with their cell phones within arm's reach. We as adults do it. I do it. It's plugged in next to my bed. It is literally with me 24 hours a day. Children keep it with them. And so what we talk about with kids is this. We say, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Just turn off the phone, walk away from the computer. Don't worry about what they say. It is the same way as if we keep bringing it into our world. If we have a coworker who is talking about us, or an ex-spouse or an ex-friend that is talking about us, and they are now spreading things on the internet or text messages through friends or through Facebook, are we easily going to be able to say, it's okay, don't worry about it, I'm just going to turn off the computer and walk away? No. As adults, what are we going to do? We're going to lash back out, right? We're going to say something to them. We're going to comment. We're going to call somebody. We're going to do something. So it consumes us as adults too. It's just that we perceive what the kids are going through not as a big deal. But to them in their world, it is a huge deal. And it honestly is something that we've got to take a step back, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, and realize that when kids are going through these things, the best thing that we can do is not tell them to ignore it, not tell them that we're going to handle it, but honestly to validate their feelings, let them talk, almost duct tape our mouths. Let them talk about what they're going through, even if it's ridiculous and we've heard it 20 times. After they're done talking, and after you've validated what you've heard, ask them what they think will work to fix it. What can you do? What are some options? What are your plans? To get them to start thinking about it. And then you can start, if they help them or give them some ideas. But at least this way, you're giving them a voice. That's what kids say so much, that parents and teachers don't get us. They talk over us or try to fix it or tell us to ignore it. They don't have a clue of what we're doing. And so it's really trying to empower students to have their voice. Once we give them a voice, majority of the times they can come up with amazing ideas, and they're the ones that have the power. And that's what we try to do within the foundation, is give peer-to-peer power, peer-to-peer leadership, and have them start working with one another. So I think at this time I will answer any questions. I could go on for 2 hours, but you guys will get really tired and they'll all want to go home. So I think at this point we'll do some questions and answers, if that works.
Sounds good. Raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. Do you have any questions? Yes, John.
First off, thank you, and you could go on for another hour, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
2 quick questions. One, the mother who posed as the boy, was she kind of a helicopter parent? Because I wondered the impact of helicopter parents like this. And the second question, looking back, I realized that many bullies are compensating for a self-perceived shortcoming in their lives.
Right.
Did y'all figure out something that why this mother felt she had to do that?
No, I don't think she was a helicopter parent. I was probably more of a helicopter parent. Why? Because of Megan having the ADD, being impulsive, those types of things. What truly this breaks down to is that she felt that my daughter was being mean to her daughter. And sometimes, look at the news. You hear about people in the side of the sidelines at sports events. The parents are coming crashing across because your kid did this to my kid. It broke down to her daughter really liked Megan. Megan was trying to make new friends to try to get away from all of this stuff, and they felt that Megan was abusing her daughter's friendship. So in turn, they thought this was a joke. This would be funny. Let's see if she's talking about her daughter. So they created this account in the beginning just to see if Megan was talking about her daughter behind her back. Megan wasn't, but it turned into a game. And why the mother was childish, why the mother would be a part of this, I have no clue, because I can't ever imagine doing that. Majority of us as adults aren't childish like that, but there are some adults who unfortunately still have that mentality. But from that, these are the things that can happen, the tragedies. I don't know. I think that many times Lori Drew was jealous. She had that perceived notion that our family was perfect, which there's no perfect family out there. In her family, they were going through some issues, and so I think sometimes it was she perceived us having that perfect life when she had no clue what our life was. So unfortunately, a lot of people say, why would she do that? I can't get into the mind of a psychopath, because that's what I consider it. And so I try to move on from that. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that in your state there wasn't a law that fit what happened. What has your state legislature looked at a law now that will work in the event this happens again?
Right. We did. After we found out, the FBI investigated what happened with Megan, so we didn't talk about it. That's why a year after she passed away is when the story finally came out. They looked at child endangerment, they looked at harassment, and they looked at stalking. And they took it up to Washington, and the FBI, everybody said, listen, there's no laws, there's nothing we can do. It doesn't include electronic communication and harassment. So they said, you know what, if you want to do something, get the laws changed. And I thought, well, that's great, because during the time that I was supposed to be learning about government, my dad was passing away, and I spent $5 on the test to get the answer. So I'm thinking, you know, I need a 101 on what the government is and the branches, and how do you do that? What am I supposed to do? And so I started talking to some other people, and once the story came out, and it was not a grand plan, we put one newspaper article in the newspaper a year after Megan passed away to try to see if we could get a representative, a senator, somebody to maybe carry this legislation forward. Well, then it turned into the whole entire media world. But from that, we received a call from one of the senators and from the governor's office that they issued an internet task force. And so I was part of that task force where we sat down and looked at the laws for harassment and stalking, and then they amended them in 2008. So it is Senate Bill 818 was one of the first ones that included the electronic harassment and electronic stalking. And then now, this was about a year ago, there was 34 states that have cyberbullying laws in place, which is wonderful. The problem is that they need to be looked at about every year because everything continues to change. And so, you know, it will protect from now on, from that point on, but Lori Drew never faced any jail time through that part.
Yes.
What advice would you give students who have friends that are bullied?
Okay, so students who have friends who are being bullied. The biggest thing is being a voice for them, listening. It is sometimes we don't have the answers when people come to us, and so we try to hurry up and say, well, don't worry about it, or I'll handle this. The thing as a friend, if you have a friend who is being bullied and they are talking anything about self-harm, they're talking anything about hurting themselves, you have to instantly, immediately go to a trusted adult. Because sometimes what I hear a lot from teens is, especially in high school, is, I talked my friend out of suicide. I talked my friend, they didn't cut tonight because I talked to them, I was there for them, I'm helping them. You can't bear the weight of that. It's too much to handle. And so you can quietly go tell a trusted adult so they can get the help. But I think truly, if they are going through some issues, it is to speak up and be a voice for them. Have them speak up and talk to a trusted adult, because if it's happening, they're not going to want to, because they're afraid that other kids, it's going to be more retaliation. The other thing that you can do is, if you are strong enough or have the ability, is to step up for them, because peer-to-peer stepping up when situations happen, it means 100% more than me as an adult or a teacher stepping up for them. And so it's trying to get other peers to start standing up around those situations, and that's hard to do if you don't have that ability to walk in and say, listen, knock it off, it's enough, stop it. And so encouragement, listening, if they're talking about harming themselves in any way, telling a trusted adult, making sure that if it's something that's going on and you feel comfortable enough telling a trusted adult about it, or encouraging them to go talk to somebody about it. And sometimes it's not their parents. Sometimes it might be a teacher or a coach or an aunt or an uncle. Not every single adult handles the situations the same, so we encourage them to keep going. Don't let one door stop, even if it's a mom or a dad. You keep moving forward until someone truly understands what you're going through.
Did Lori Drew ever apologize for what happened?
Did Lori Drew ever apologize? That is probably the #1 question that I get no matter where I go, and it is even from 5th and 6th graders will ask that question. Because we all think that when someone does something wrong, they should apologize, that they should feel remorse, right? Well, Lori Drew didn't really feel like she did anything wrong. So when you have that mentality, apologies weren't going to matter. She sent a letter to us about 3 days after we found out that they were involved. And the letter stated that she would, that's a nice song, huh? Well, it's for the whole night. The batteries.
It's everything.
It's everything. This is like normal for the night, so we're good. So at any rate, she sent us a letter stating that she knows that we are upset or mad or feel that she bears responsibility, but that she's sorry that it happened, but she has something to explain and to talk about. At the end of the day, I know that there is that saying that you have to forgive and forget and to be able to move on. I have moved on, but I can't forgive. I'm not in a place, maybe 6 years, I can't do it. I can move on. I have realized that I can't focus on that any longer. It did nothing, but it destroyed me more. But realizing that that situation that happened, that doesn't matter anymore. Megan was much larger, much bigger than this whole entire situation. And so I move on from that because there's no words that she could say that would make a change. You know, if somebody was really remorseful, the 18-year-old girl sent me an email through Facebook about 2 years ago, and saying that she laid awake at night and she thought about why didn't she do something? Why didn't she step forward? Why didn't she do something? Megan could still be here. She thought about who Megan would be today. And I will tell you, it took me a good 2 hours because I went through that instant, you know, crying and upset and mad, and all of those emotions start building right back up. And then I sat there and thought, she was 18 years old at the time. She thought it was funny. She didn't think that anything was going to happen from it. And so I truly believe that she felt remorse. And so I talked to her. I sent her an email back and said, you know, I understand what you're going through. I don't want you to live with this for the rest of your life. You know, I want you, it happened. But from this, move forward. Do something positive for somebody else. Do something in this world to be able to create it and make it better for somebody else. And so for her, I was able to do that. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
What advice do you have for any parents who have kids who are being abused?
Okay. Being abused physically at school or bullied, you know, I think it's very hard, and we walk on this fine line as a parent of overstepping and making it worse, or kind of being there and then letting them handle it. And I think it's one of those things of staying in constant contact with the school. The problem is this: if we step back and don't do anything, like I did with Megan, which I was always in contact, they knew me on first name basis. They knew me by voice because Megan would forget her homework, Megan would forget this, Megan would, you know, it was constant. But if there was ever anything, I think we try to let them work through some things. If it is not working, whether it's them talking to the teacher, talking to the student, them trying to handle it, if it is not working and you continue to see what they're going through, you have no choice to step in. And a perfect example is my daughter, who is 16 years old. So I travel around, I do all of this every day. She was going through bullying at school, and it was racial. It was because she has friends of a different color, and the school she goes to does not. And so there were constant comments made to her, and this had been going on for a long time, and I kept trying to tell her. She would get really upset, and I would say, Allison, you can only believe in what you believe in. You cannot change people who do not want to be changed. You believe in, you stand with your convictions, and you move forward. And I tried that, but it got to the point where she was getting a lot of comments. And she begged me not to go to the school. And I told her, I don't have a choice at this point. I can't allow you to continue to keep going to school, going through these types of comments and these things happening. It's not okay. And so I did set up a meeting. And I did go in, and I met with the dean of students, and I met with the school counselor, and they assured me that they were going to talk to these boys. What happened? This is about 3 months ago. Allison, finally, she was sobbing in there. She was like, please don't, I don't want them coming back, because she was afraid they were going to all come back and say, you know, you're such a snitch. What, you had to go cry to them? What's your problem? Grow up. She was petrified of that. We assured her that this was not going to be the case. Not more than did I leave, 2 hours later, she calls me sobbing. Mom, I told you it wasn't going to do any good. I told you were going to make it worse. Allison, what happened? Well, the dean of students went into the classroom, started getting all of the kids to find out, did you say this? Did you hear this? Did you do this? He comes back to her and he says, now this is a racial comment that was said in front of an entire classroom, and states, I thought it was a bigger issue in the morning when I talked to your mom than it actually came out to be. The boy did say that he said it, but you know, I thought more students heard about it. I will tell you what, thank goodness it was a Friday, because at that time, he was already gone for the day. So I had time to think about it, and I called him first thing on Monday morning, and I said, I need to know if these are the exact words that you used. And he said, well, yeah, probably so. Probably not a good choice of words. I said, they're not only not a good choice of words, but what you have also done is now you have completely crushed any type of, where Allison thought that you were really going to stand up and do something about it. You've completely washed that away. Do you think she will ever want to come forward and talk about it? I said, I expect you to go apologize to her. I expect you, and he said, well, Ms. Meier, I understand I made a mistake. I'm new at this. I'm trying to learn. I said, that's fine. You go tell her. You go tell her that you are new at this, that you're trying to learn, that you made a mistake, a bad choice of words, because she will have more respect for you saying that, than she will have respect for you now. And I expect it to be handled and taken care of. And so from that, he did. He went down, he apologized to her, she came home, and things have been better. I continue to keep trying to let her know, she has this thing of, why are people this way, or why are people that way? Again, you can handle yourself, you believe in what you believe in, and people are going to either join in or they're not. But I think there is a point where you have to say, too bad, so sad, I have to go to the school, I have to do something because this isn't okay. And that's kind of a personal issue, but if it continues to keep going on, you have to do something. And sometimes if they're begging and screaming, maybe it's getting outside professional help, getting them to a counselor so they can learn coping skills and how to deal with different situations. Half of us as adults need coping skills when we go to work every single day to try to deal with our coworkers. So, it's nothing for us as for kids to kind of work on those issues.
Last one, Judge. It's coming in front of you.
I'm interested in finding out if you can tell us whether any research has been done and published that would inform school districts, educators on a protocol to use, as opposed to having every school think that it's going to be able to reinvent the wheel,
right,
or require every parent to have to go to every school district and have every school administrator believe that he or she has the infinite wisdom to be God,
right,
when they have no basis for believing anything other than the fact that they thought it up.
Right. I don't know. If you look on the internet, there are 1,000,001 different programs, 1,000,001 different curriculums, 1,000,001 different speakers about this, about that. The only research-based information that I know on cyberbullying, they're statistics, and it's from Cyberbully. It's Justin Patchen, and they're both professors, and it's Samir Hindu. And they're both professors, and what they do is they do researched information on cyberbullying statistics. They do give information on what schools should do and how they should handle it. The problem is this. I went to the U.S. Department of Education's conference, and I spoke there, and I spoke to the staff of Arne Duncan, talking about what can we do. When I went to the White House, it was all about what can we do about this issue? How can we come together? The problem is that what they state is on a federal level, there is not going to be anything that ever says this is how public schools handle this in the United States. We are going to let it be on state by state, letting them make the choices, them make the decisions. And unfortunately, I hope it changes one day, at least having some guidelines, because curriculum, I don't care if it's curriculum, if it's a parent thought of it, what it is. If that person in that school from the top to the bottom are not all on board, it's never going to work. And that's what I've always stated. You can have an amazing principal, you can have an amazing school counselor, proactive teachers, a good parent volunteer organization. That's great. But if you don't have the school board who believes in it, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, every single staff member down to the janitor, to the bus drivers, if everybody is not on board with how they handle this, what is the procedure, what do they do when they encounter this, it is never going to work, because we're still going to have Jimmy who walks through the door at school. He's been picked on the bus, and the bus driver tells Jimmy 3 times to move to the front. Jimmy, move to the front. Mike, you stop it. Leave him alone. Jimmy goes through the front door. Now, nothing has been reported unless it's a major incident. So now he goes into his first hour. The teacher has to move him or move the other kid because they keep picking on him. Nothing's reported because they're just picking around. We moved him around. They're still doing fine. He goes into gym. He gets picked on. Nothing happens. They move the kids around. At the end of the day, in the lunch line, nothing's said. The lunch lady sees it happening. Janitor sees it happening, but they don't report it because they just tell him to stop it, knock it off. Boys, move on. At the end of the day, Jimmy comes home, and there's been 9 different incidences. If no one has reported it and there's not a way to start seeing that this is a pattern, it's never going to end. And so that's what I talk about, getting from the top to the bottom, having a protocol and how they deal with it. I don't care how they do it. Everything is computerized now. Have it when you see it, mark it down, what happened, have it go back so that there's somebody who can monitor to see if this is happening consistently. And then it's one of those things of, the best suggestion I always have is getting students empowered. Your students will make the change. They come up with the most amazing ideas, the thoughts to get kids to understand. We do these leadership workshops where these kids come up with, just to give you an idea on a concept. When they did our workshop, we talked about the suicide statistic, 1 every 15 minutes in the United States. This group of high school kids wanted to be able to, during that month, show the effects of what suicide can be within your school. What they decided to do was every 15 minutes, they would call somebody down to the office. They would paint their face white, and every 15 minutes throughout the entire day of the school, now you would be able to start seeing the impact of the faces painted white. And then they had an assembly and they talked about it. And then what they did is they created information and statistics, and they presented to the teachers and to the school. They're the ones who did that, and it was this amazing idea that came from the students. And that created much more change and awareness than if a teacher or a principal comes in and talks to the staff about it. And so I say, get the students involved, get them to start doing the research, them to start making the change, because once they do it, it's amazing.
Tina, thank you so much for coming back to Little Rock and sharing Megan's story with all of us.
you.
And thank all of you for coming out, and I hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you, I appreciate it.